Welcome to the Edge of Greatness podcast. The path to greatness is never linear and requires patience and consistency. Join us on our journey as we peel back the layers of success, searching for that elusive core. Each week we will explore a different component of greatness, utilizing experts who have traveled some part of the path that we are all on. We aim to uncover insights into the areas of leadership, coaching, performance, overcoming failure, the power of habits, and so much more. We are all on the edge of greatness. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Edge of Greatness podcast. I'm your host, Charles Schultz, and today I have with me a very special guest. It's the coach of Lancaster High School here in Columbus, Corey Conn. He has been over at Lancaster now for, a decade or more?
Yes, be coming up on my 10th year, yep.
There we go. And this year, with everything that was going on, going through a COVID year, coming back and having a bunch of guys who have never had varsity experience, he took his team and won a district title, which is very difficult to do out of the Central District. There are some extremely talented teams, and you had to beat one of the top coaches in the area, in my opinion, to get there. So it's a real pleasure to have you on. Thank you for joining me today.
Coach Schultz, I again appreciate you for having me. We definitely had a really good year, and it's always going to be tough, but especially going on the road this year, playing at Grove City in a district final, going against Coach Alexander, who does a phenomenal job. We definitely celebrated that one because, like you said, it's hard to win them, but especially against a great team, great program, and a great coach.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about what you've been doing over the last few years to turn your program into a consistent winner, because Lancaster has always had good players. They've always had good talent, but they've never seemed to really develop the consistent winning attitude until probably the last 5 years or so with you. They've been really competitive on a regular basis. And it's one of those things that I think it has a lot to do with the culture you've built. So talk to me about some of the culture pieces that you implemented to take you to the next level.
Well, I think, it definitely comes back to our culture, and it's not necessarily something that we always talk about. It's just something that we do and that we live by. And I think it kind of came about for a couple different reasons. Is you mentioned it. My first 2 years at Lancaster as an assistant, in those 2 years, we won 10 games. So it was a difficult couple of years, especially with, like you mentioned too, we had some good players. So it was kind of confusing from the aspect of, we have some really good talent or some good players, but we're just not putting it together. So it took a lot of reflection just to figure out what was going wrong when I became the head coach. What was going wrong with those years? Why didn't we win more? And it's a mentality. It really is. If you don't believe that you can win, you're not. If you show up to the field defeated before you even take infield, it's going to be pretty tough to compete in that game. For me personally, I always think back to my second year as head coach. We were playing Gahanna. Coach Shade, again, another good coach, does a phenomenal job. We were winning 2-1, and we end up losing on an infield pop-up with 2 outs. They had second and third. We drop it, and we lose. And for whatever reason, I always remember that game. And I remember thinking at a certain point in that game, they had a mound meeting. Every one of their players in the mound meeting was signed to go to D1. And I really, it was a moment of doubt for me that I always think back on is, can we win? Like, can we win here at Lancaster going against these types of teams? That after that year, I thought back to that and I said, listen, if we can't win, or if I don't think that we can win, then I need to stop coaching, because obviously I'm not giving, our kids the best shot. And if we can win, then I need to figure out how. What are the solutions to doing that? And it kind of hit me right there about culture. So from then on, we kind of, and kind of helped me kind of guide myself, and then obviously our team is developing our core values. And, we go in from an acronym of GALES, GALES, and each one of those stands for something that we talk about. And we have a presentation about each year, with the G being grind. Then we go attitude, leadership, excellence, and then selfless.
I love that. No, that's a great one to have. And obviously not everyone gets that opportunity to put their name into an acronym like that, but that worked out great for you guys. throughout your coaching career, is there a moment or a time where something occurred that has inspired the way that you coach now, that how you lead these kids? Because I see you as this positive leader, this energetic guy who is loving and caring of his players, but demanding at the same time. And I think that's the huge piece of being successful as a leader and a coach is, can you balance that? I love you and I really need to push you, but it's for the right reasons. So is there a leader that you had or an experience that you had that kind of led you to be this person that's grown into this type of leader?
I think it's a culmination of things, and it kind of goes back to that experience I was just telling you. Is mindset shift with me to thinking that we can win, no matter who we're playing or who we're up against. But again, it was also thinking that we're playing Grove City. Obviously, Coach Alexander's done great things. We're playing Gahanna, Coach Shade. We're playing Pick North. Coach Thomas he's had an incredible run. And then we had Pick Central with you and Ray, and then you add in Reynoldsburg. Coach Benjamin's a great baseball guy. We're facing all these teams, and I think early on I just kind of focused on what we didn't have. So instead of focusing on solutions, I'm focusing on our problems, and I think that just reflected in how we played. Where obviously when in 2015 we developed our core values, we started going by those. But there still was maybe a little something missing. And I heard Coach Deegan from Denison talk at the state clinic in Ohio in 2016, and he talked all about culture, and it just kind of inspired me to. I think we've always kind of done from the baseball side. You go to the conventions, like we're doing that. Why isn't it working? Why aren't our guys hitting 400 dropping bombs, whatever the case may be? But the culture piece is something that. I think we did as a coaching staff, and we did with like our captains, so to speak, but we didn't do it with the entire group. And I remember we had a leadership team where we had 4 guys, and we went through some of these different things that we now do with our entire team. And one of our players said, "Coach, we need to do this with everybody." And that was kind of a turning point, kind of that 2016, and then obviously 17 was kind of the year that we kind of put it all together on a large scale. And we're able to really kind of implement it. And, for me, if I'm faking it or if I'm doing anything like that, like our players are going to see right through us. So I think it definitely had to start and change, with me first, being positive, letting some of those things go. And, obviously everybody makes errors. So if I'm over there losing my stuff in the dugout, or if somebody strikes out and I'm over there just, going crazy, that's not necessarily being very positive. But I think it also goes back to the relationships that you have with your players to be able to, like you said, be able to give them the information, be able to maybe sometimes give them the tough criticism that they need in the moment, but they're not necessarily taking it as disrespect. They're taking it as a way to get better. So I think that, when you can develop our core values, develop our culture, and it's kind of been going through the years now, and then you can develop those personal relationships with each individual player. Then you start to see some great things happen. The players, they don't take any kind of, they take it as constructive criticism, not necessarily as, disrespect or criticizing my game or whatever you see that, maybe some of those guys early on in my career did take it that way, take it the wrong way. But now we don't really fight those battles right now.
No, that's a huge piece of the step in the right direction to being a championship culture is being able to give the tough criticism and not take it personally, because so many people feel attacked, like when they're told, you're not doing this right. And they're like, "What do you mean? I'm doing it right."
Yeah, absolutely. I think it also goes back to now instead of maybe when I was younger, I would say, "Hey, you're going to do this way," and then it's the same way for everybody. Now I think it comes with a growth as a coach too. Is you've experienced more players, you've read more stuff, you've kind of dove into the information a lot more than maybe you could or did as a younger coach. But everybody's kind of different. So instead of now saying, "Hey, do this," it's now, "Hey, try this for me, see how this works, see how it feels." We've kind of experimented with some different stances for guys, and it's not the same thing for every player. And again, you're going to have a different feel depending on how your body moves, how you work, and that's what we're after ultimately. It's not just the dictator directive. It's, hey, listen, let's try this out. Let's see how it feels, and if we have success, we'll keep doing it, and if not, we'll definitely figure it out.
Oh yeah, that was definitely one of the big success moments for me, is when I started asking more questions to the kids instead of saying, this is how we're going to do things today.
Yes.
So what I want to get into here is, obviously this year was an extremely successful year, but it was also a very difficult year and something different than you've ever experienced before. Obviously you lost last season. You have a whole new team that came in. How many guys did you have returning with any varsity experience?
We had zero. We didn't have anybody returning with any experience in it. To piggyback off of that, our 2020 team, on paper, was probably the most talented team that we've ever had here forever. So, we had a lot of guys on the 2020 team with 3-4 years of RC experience coming back. And so, not only do we start this year fresh, but even a lot of those guys, they had never really, last year would have been 2020 would have been the first year that they even sniffed the varsity field. And also to be able to learn from that, elite senior class was going to be huge. And then, so you lose out on that. You don't have that varsity experience with how you're going to handle, in-game adversity. You just don't know. So a lot of unpredictable factors coming into this year, but obviously we had a pretty successful year.
Right. And one of the things that I was talking with Coach Alexander about earlier before the season, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to that episode or not. We were talking about how the teams and the coaches that built the right culture were going to be the ones that ultimately were going to have success this year. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, because I think what you're doing over there is amazing. I think you've built something very special. And I think that the kids are really bought into doing all the little things and the extra stuff to make it a consistent growth in the right direction. So what I want to know is, what challenges were unique to this group this year that was something you'd never faced before because of coming off of a COVID year and also not having any varsity experience? So obviously there had to have been some unique challenges this year to overcome to have the success you had.
Yeah, absolutely. So, first off is with, the start of the school year being different, not being back full time, kind of being online. So, for me personally, I had 2 all virtual classes. So I'm seeing less kids throughout the day. I'm not seeing as many as of my players throughout the day. So that's a huge change. And then early on too, we didn't know, could we work out? Are we going to be able to work out through the winter? How's that going to look like? You had to take, temperature, kind of do all the COVID symptom check each and every day, try to make sure they're spaced out. And we kind of pride ourselves on obviously being together, being close, but also, touching each other, high fives, fist bumps, celebrating. Early on, we couldn't do a lot of those things. And for a team that needed to gel, it's kind of hard to gel when you can't do a lot of those physical things. You want to say, hey guys, let's have a team meal, or why don't some of you guys go out and go out to Roosters later, or do those things. Well, we couldn't really kind of promote that sort of thing because of obvious COVID related stuff. So it was really hard for this year, especially early on, to be able to gel as a group. And then again, we had a senior heavy 2020 class. A lot of those guys that this year we didn't have any varsity experience. And obviously you're spending time through the off season and through the preseason with some of those younger guys. But once you break off into your own team, you don't necessarily see those guys that often, and you can't really give them game lessons or develop relationships like that. And you're still trying to obviously cultivate your relationships with your older players. So, for me personally, not being able to really have some of those relationships that you normally have, obviously you get your whole junior year and we get to kind of go through the fire together. Well, our 2021 seniors didn't have that. And there were, some of our 2020 sophomores that are now juniors, we didn't have that previous background and relationship to go off of. So it was difficult. And, not only did we not have those things to fall back on, you can't really have some of those preseason team meetings together. You're kind of nervous to have a group of kids in your office and discuss things. And, so we didn't have our leadership team meetings this year, with some of our top guys. Some of our classroom sessions this year, we had to break them up into 2 classrooms just to make sure that they're all spaced apart, which, again, it just became difficult and added another variable. But I think it goes back to what I said earlier. If you kind of focus on the problems and not seek and find the solutions, then you're just going to get stuck. And so we try to maintain and make sure, hey, here's our problem. What's the solution to it? Let's make sure that we do that, as opposed to just trying to focus on all the negatives, which this year was really easy to do.
Yeah, no, I agree. If you only look at what's the difficult stuff, it's going to reflect back that, I'm only looking at the hard stuff, so things must be really hard, instead of looking for solutions and looking for opportunities and growth from the adversity, which obviously I think this year, those who were with the growth mindset of the adversity is going to be there for everyone, we just have to grow faster, we're the ones who are going to be successful. And I think that's a big piece of it. So what I want to go to next is, where do you go to look for opportunities to develop and grow yourself? Because obviously you're a coach who's constantly trying to find new information and learn and grow. Where do you spend a lot of your time right now as far as educating yourself and growing and developing your skills as a coach and a leader?
I think in this day and age, I mean, it's never been easier to be able to do that, to be able to grow in multiple ways, whether that's on the baseball side, leadership side, really anything. I used to coach basketball a little bit early on, and there's an account I follow that draws up all these sets, and it's so easy to be able to find those things. So for me personally, I think Twitter is obviously the easiest, especially with, hey, there's a minute or so clip out there that you can watch and really dive into something. I definitely, James Clear sends out a newsletter every week, every Thursday. I think that's probably the best newsletter I think I subscribe to. Outside of obviously Coach Deegan, he sends one out as well. I think I just try to consume and read as much as I can from a leadership perspective, as well as, stay up to date on, what, Kai Correa or some of these infield guys are doing, some of these pitching guys. So I think definitely Twitter's by far the easiest, and just diving into, once you go down some of those wormholes about who those guys follow and what they're reading, you kind of trigger your own kind of development, so to speak.
Yeah, no, I think Twitter is a place that you can make what you want of it. And if you choose the right path on those social media platforms, you can really grow a lot by the people you choose to follow.
Absolutely. That's what I got. I have a stack of books that I have read, but I also have a stack of books that I have yet to read, because I get these recommendations and I kind of read a little bit about it. I'm like, I got to have that book, but you can only read so many.
Yeah. So you mentioned James Clear and his newsletter. So I'm assuming you read his book.
Yep. Atomic Habits, which was, yep.
So what are some of the habits you try to create with your organization and your team? What are some of the key component habits that you want them to become like ingrained in them?
Well, I think number one, it's just consistency and a routine. And what we try to do is we want to be the same all throughout, from fall, winter, spring, summer, and then keep that year after year. And I think we've done a really good job with that. A lot of our guys, they also have jobs. So, there's never any kind of, question about the schedule is, hey, are we going to lift, at this time, or is it going to be at that time? They can kind of base their job or their work schedule around what we're doing. So, we try to stay consistent with what we're doing, try to stay consistent with our schedule, and try to have that consistency kind of year round. And it allows them, or hopefully will allow them to, develop and set their own routines, outside of baseball as well, which, again, that's our guys, they're going to be baseball players for 4 years. I don't want to say guaranteed because of what happened in 2020, but 4 years, they're going to be baseball players. If they're lucky enough, they can maybe get another 4 years. And if they're really elite, then maybe even some time after that. But, they're eventually going to, be husbands, fathers, brothers, sisters, no, maybe not sisters, but be all those things for a lot longer, 40 years than they are going to be a baseball player. So, a lot of the things that we do too, in developing some of those habits and routines, it's hopefully something that's going to be able to, last them a lifetime, and not just, how to field a ground ball, or how to, what cuts and relays are. All those things are important, obviously, on the baseball side, but, we want something that's longer lasting.
No, I think that's the key to any good coaching system, is to build something that's going to last beyond the playing days and maintain that love of the game. Because I think so many coaches get caught up in the wins and losses that you end up burning the kid out and they don't love the game anymore.
Yeah, and it's easy to do that. It really is.
Yeah.
think it definitely goes back to your process and kind of, core values. Nothing in our core values talks about wins and losses. And I think that, again, it's easy to kind of get sidetracked from that, but, try to pull back to the center a little bit and think about what those core values are, especially after a big win, even especially after a big loss. It's easy to kind of take those things as devastating or go too far to the other end of exhilarating. But if you can kind of stay in the middle towards your core values, I think you're going to set yourself up for long time and lasting success.
Yeah. And you were talking obviously about them being high school kids and doing other things. And how do you balance the letting them go be a kid and enjoy that time as a kid and getting all the things and lessons you want in? Because obviously you don't just do baseball stuff. You lift, you do classroom sessions, you have talks, you do all these different things, which is awesome. But do you ever get worried that maybe you're pushing too far, or how do you find that balance?
Yeah, absolutely. We thought in 2020 we were really leaning towards, hey, we're going to lift, work out, do all this stuff. We're going to do this 4 days a week. We'd go 3 days. Like, no, we're going to go 4. And then I got to thinking, what we don't want is we don't want to create baseball as a job. We don't want kids to kind of dread and look at it, man, I got to go to baseball today. We want the opposite. Hey, I get to go to baseball today. And I think that, if we can kind of keep it at that, and I think that, there's always a balance there. And I'll tell you what, the secret sauce, I guess, so to speak, is maybe my wife. She's really good at kind of either pushing me to go a little further or kind of pulling me and reining me back. So, I always get a good judge and a good feel from her as to whether or not we're doing too much or too little. But also just talking to our players. I think that they're going to give you good insight as to whether, hey, are we doing enough? Are we doing too much? Do we need to go a little further? Do we need to pull back a little bit? So I think having that trust with them and being able to talk freely and ask, hey, what are you guys feeling right now? Do we need to do this? Do we not need to do this? We a little burnout. We need to do more. I think that obviously will help kind of guide you in the right direction.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree that communication is a crucial piece. And I think sometimes coaches don't do enough communicating with the players. They communicate with the other coaches, they communicate with other staff and whatever else, but they don't communicate enough with the players to say, all right, where are we at? What do you want? And so within that communication piece, I want to know, is there more to it for you on the communication end to help them? Because personally, I think that we are really drifting away from quality communication with the amount of social media we have. And that's one of the reasons I started doing this, is to have better conversations and to be able to have better communication skills. But what are some of the things that maybe you're doing to help develop that communication amongst your team, to be able to talk to adults, to be able to talk to their peers? Are there things that you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So, we all through the off season, we have various presentations, and our big kind of, we do this year after year. It's from a John Gordon book, Hard Hat 21, talks about 21 ways to be a great teammate. We have, some of our either top players or returners or whoever it may be, they draw a number out of a hat. So whatever number they get, that's the trait of being a great teammate that they have, and they have to create a presentation of. So they have to use maybe a personal example, something that they've experienced, as well as something maybe a professional or college example that they've experienced. So you see like the Alabama running back this year that went to a pro day for his teammates, but it wasn't even his, and he drove 9 hours. So we talk about those things. And back when it was Tua and Jalen Hurts, a lot of those good examples came up. And we obviously have some very powerful examples in our own program that get brought up every year as well. So they get used to kind of talking, in front of people, in front of groups. And I think there's no substitution for that. We also do different goal setting where we kind of break them up with class, break them up by position, have them kind of explain just in a small group setting and talk amongst each other, as well as bring it back to the whole group. We read a book every year. The book's different depending on kind of what we need or what I feel that we need. So we also have them create presentations from the book as well. So this year we did Energy Bus.
I like that.
We gave them each a rule, kind of had a couple of them work on a rule together and just explaining it, how it kind of relates to us and how we can be better at that rule. So really just getting them to talk in front of each other. I'll be honest, probably the best thing that we do from a communication standpoint, and we started this a few years ago, is the way our schedule sets up is we're able to have our senior night at 7 o'clock at Beavers Field. So we got a little bit of time before we play. So we take our BP, right after school, and then we go inside. We have all of our underclassmen that are on varsity that's been with our seniors all year. We have them basically write a thank you to them, or just a letter about their favorite experiences or what they remember, and just kind of talk about each senior in front of the group. And some of those things have been just extremely powerful. I'm getting chills right now.
Yeah, no.
It's just been incredible from talk about being a connected team, being a team that fights for each other. I think those moments that we've had in the past from that senior night, we call it like a senior send-off, those have been incredible. And at one point I thought about, hey, we should record this, but I'm like, no, this needs to be kind of in-house, private, and just let these guys kind of talk freely. There's definitely some hilarious things that are said, some stuff that I had not have any clue about was going on, different various points. But it's very, very incredible and powerful moment.
No, I absolutely love that. I think that is such a huge piece for growth, not only for the seniors to hear what impact they had on the younger guys, but for the younger guys to talk about how much they've been impacted by those guys.
Absolutely. And a lot of times, we've had some freshmen and some sophomores, they don't really say a whole bunch throughout the year. So when they get up and stand in front of the room, it's pretty cool to see them talk. And like you said, just hear the impact, that these older guys, these seniors have had on them, not just the current year, but, for 2-3 years if they've been around them much.
Yeah, no, it's huge to see the growth too, because like you said, if you're a sophomore on varsity, you're a little reserved. You're probably not quite sure of yourself, and by the end of the year, by senior night, hopefully you've got a little bit of comfort and you can let that out.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, some of the stuff, some of the funniest stuff comes from our quietest guys that we're doing some of those things. And it also helps us as a coach, like, hey, we better keep a closer eye on this guy. He might be quiet, but we got to watch him a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So obviously we've talked about culture. We've talked about some of the things you do to develop. And you mentioned going out and picking up information from specific guys on the baseball side of things. There's so much that goes into building a program, into developing an organization to be successful. What information or what advice would you give to a coach who's maybe taking on a team for the first time on maybe where to start or how to not overwhelm themselves by trying to change all of it at once? Because there's so much happening. How do we help them out?
I think definitely it's not going to happen overnight. And I think a lot of, we've had a really good run these last few years, but, up until 2018, it'd been 25 years since we won a district title. So it's not something that like, hey, I became head coach and then we're just winning all this. Like it took a long time to create and develop a lot of the things that we're implementing, that we're doing. I think, first and foremost, start small. Let's not kind of chew off something that, you can't swallow all at once. I think Coach Deegan, like I said, his presentation in 2016, I think it was, that really kind of lit the spark in me. He's got a book out too as well. I think, by far, if you're trying to find out, how to create your culture, he's the first person that you start with. And, once we kind of touched on it too, once you kind of, go down some of these rabbit holes, you kind of get different recommendations on what to read, what to do. I definitely, if I'm starting, and it's kind of why we did it this year, if I'm starting from scratch one, we're going to read the Energy Bus as a team together. Try to get us all going in the same direction. It's an easy read. It's a quick read. And I think the message is extremely powerful. So, those would be definitely two places I would start in the Energy Bus, having those presentations. That's definitely the first place I'd start from a team standpoint.
Yeah. So it's more about getting everyone on the same page and united, and then you can start to implement the little stuff and the pieces.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's, once they start to understand the message and they realize that, hey, this is what we need to do collectively, then you can get in and kind of push them a little bit to maybe they're getting pushed out of their comfort zone. And, once you can kind of push them out of their comfort zone and they don't kind of, there's always going to be a little kind of pushback to it. But once you're able to kind of walk them to it, get them out of their comfort zone, then they're going to kind of go further by themselves where they don't kind of, I don't want to say they don't need their hand held to do that, but they're not just going to willingly go out of their comfort zone unless you give them that initial push.
Yeah. So to speak back on this year, I want to change directions a little bit. Was there a moment throughout the season where all of a sudden in your mind you went, "Ooh, we might have something special here"? Or was it one of those things that kind of snuck up on you when all of a sudden the tournament hit and then you got a little hot, and then, or was there a moment that this year you're like, "Oh, these guys got it"?
It was kind of the opposite, to be completely honest with you. We were struggling to start the year. Our practices, again, not having that 2020 year or the full, kind of off-season practice, that hurt us. And especially with a young team, we're still trying to figure out positions, who's going to be the best piece or best fit where, how does that all look like? So early on, man, our practices were, I guess you could say, intense. There's a lot of, I guess, redirection, trying to do things the right way. That's not how we do things here, or those types of things. A lot of learning. And we really kind of, you go in a 2020 year where you have a lot of your returners from the year before, they're all coming back. They hit the ground running. Well, now we have to walk it back, and we can't start it, at point, X. We got to go back to point C and get our way to the, to be able to get to Z. So I think that we really had to slow things down, really had to teach a lot better. We had to, my one word coming into this year was patience. Like, I need to have patience. I can't expect them to be at the level of our 2020 class. They're not the 2020 class. I need to have patience, and we need to reteach. And, probably what's going to happen is the next day, hopefully the 5 things that we learned from the day before, hopefully we learn 2 or 3 of them. We don't have to reteach all 5. So there was a lot of that. And then we go into our scrimmages. We got destroyed. There's no other way to put it. And again, we scrimmage really good teams. New Albany is one of the teams we scrimmaged, Olentangy Liberty, and we scrimmaged Westerville South. So, at that point of the time, we knew those were good teams, but to see where those teams finished the year, those were elite teams, and they kind of put it to us a little bit. So, we just, we talk about it. Let's focus on one day at a time. Let's try to control what we can control. And, really kind of took it a day at a time and a game at a time. And eventually, you kind of look down and, you're 15-3 or 60 or whatever we were at that midpoint of the year, and we got a chance to win the league. And then it was, hey, we might get a top 10 draw this year, which we never really thought was going to happen before the season, especially after our 3 scrimmages. So yeah, about mid-season, we knew that we had a pretty good team. Our guys were starting to take form as to who they were and what they could accomplish. And again, the belief that they started to have in one another, that was the greatest thing to see, and how they fought for one another. I think obviously the Grove City in the district final, 270 baseball put out a video, and obviously just seeing the emotion that our guys had, the emotion that they played with. You kind of obviously see it in the game, but to kind of look at it from the outside perspective, and just even celebrating just getting outs. We talk about, how important that is. And to see those guys kind of do those things, it was just incredible.
Yeah, no, I it's interesting that you said that you struggled early on, because I actually had a conversation with Chris Zaker out of Lancaster there. And we were talking about, I was like, wait and see, this is what you're going to see happen. You're going to see some teams in the softball and the baseball world that maybe didn't look very good at the beginning of the season, who are going to have the right culture and the right leadership and the right pieces to develop it over time, that are going to get hot and do damage in the tournament. And it was one of those things that, like, a school like Pick Central in softball wasn't overly successful through the year, but they had the right pieces. They have the right mentality. And by the time the tournament rolled around, you didn't want to face them. And it sounded like you guys had a similar experience where early on, it's like, oh God.
So, kind of going here too, we didn't know what we had, and we kind of try to do in addition to our core values, kind of like a yearly motto. And this year's motto was dogs. We need to be dogs. I don't know if coming in the year, I'm like, I don't know if we got any. And then after those first scrimmages, I'm like, we need to find some. But yeah, so again, it's just that mentality, kind of fighting for one another, being a dog. And we kind of said that dog stood for something. So it's a determined attitude. You need to have a determined attitude with a warrior grit, and then be selfless while we're doing that. And I think that, you started to see that take shape throughout the season. And obviously, once you get to the end of the year, you're playing really good teams, and that's when those things shine through. And we beat obviously Kaufman. That's a solid team, and we were able to beat those guys. Then you come in, we play Newark for the fourth time, who they have a really good pitcher, and their lineup is pretty good too. And we were down in that game, and a wild game. But to be able to kind of have that mentality that we kind of fall back on, or that culture that you fall back on, that's what really kind of helped us through, our tournament run and late in the season.
Yeah, I really like the way that you use different words to carry a togetherness with your team, because I think the unity that your team has is what gives it strength as the season goes on. Because as you know, those in the baseball world know, it's a long season in a short time. Like it's one of those grinding, like you're shot out of a cannon, the season's over, but along the way you're just running through trees nonstop, and it
Yes,
bears on you.
absolutely. Yeah, no, that's a great visual. That's exactly how it. But yeah, and I think that, especially again, one of those lessons you learn from early on as a coach is, you can get into the middle of that short season. It feels pretty long, especially after, you've been practicing maybe inside, and then all of a sudden you go through this 2 week stretch, and then you're in the middle of your season where, the first game seems like forever ago, and then the tournament still seems like it's forever down the road. You can get into one of those lulls, and I've seen it where all of a sudden you start playing bad. All of a sudden the team starts to separate a little bit. Then all of a sudden, when you do get towards the end of the season, kind of wears off, and you're kind of almost, I hate to even say this, but I experienced it. Some of those guys just want the season to be over with. And I think that, once we kind of developed, hey, this is our kind of motto for this year, and this is what we're kind of after here. It kind of carries you through some of those low points that they're guaranteed to happen. But maybe instead of a 2 week law, you can shorten that to a 2 or 3 day law.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the other thing too. Playing baseball in Ohio, obviously you get a little bit lucky with that turf over there, but some of those teams end up playing 5-6 games in a 5-day stretch, and then they turn around and play 3-4 more in the next 5 days after that, and that's where it gets to be the grind. And while you get to make up some of those with the turf, I'm sure you still have those stretches too, where you're like, man, who are we throwing today?
Oh,
What
absolutely.
what are we gonna
Absolutely.
do?
At the end of our league season, we had 4 league games in the week there, and we hadn't wrapped it up as of yet, and we end up against Pick Central. We end up bringing up a freshman to start the game, and our freshman was dealing. He actually threw a complete game, gave up 3 runs. Offense did enough to be able to score and kind of give us a cushion. Defense played phenomenal. But yeah, we're bringing up a freshman who hadn't even pitched on JV yet. And he just come out, and again, kind of that mentality. He was a dog. He competed like I knew that he was capable of competing, and just extremely proud of him.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the key takeaways from being a coach that has to deal with the season. I think it's unlike any other with being a spring sport in the Midwest. It's such a short period of time to get all your games in, to get everything ready. You're like you said, you spend so much time indoors. And again, I guess that's why I go back to the power of a strong culture being the ultimate thing that carries a team, especially playing in Ohio in baseball. I think it's so much more valuable than the extra hitting lesson or the extra throwing session. It's that
Yeah,
connectedness.
our guys are going to get their extra hitting in. They're going to get maybe some extra throwing in. They're going to get kind of all that extra baseball stuff in. But the thing that they're not going to willingly or do on their own is some of the leadership type stuff and reading articles and reading books and those types of things. So I definitely think that's obviously been a game changer for us.
Yeah. So when you look at your next step and your next phase of your development, is there a place that you're looking currently to like go to next for you to take your coaching and leadership to the next level? Or are you pretty like set on what your habits and routines are at this point?
I definitely think that, we have a good process right now, but it's trying to just strengthen that process. And I
Mhm.
think that, every year there's going to be different variables that can kind of either take you away from that process or maybe strengthen it for you. So, right now it's the kind of balance for me is, I have 3 young kids. So it's how can I give my best to baseball? And I heard this quote somewhere, it's always stuck to me is, don't give your family the best of you, not the rest of you. And so I think that I'm still trying to figure out that balance now of how do I continue to give my players in our program the best and still go home and give my family the best as well. And so that's going to be the unique challenge coming up, especially with, my oldest just turned 7. So, they're going to start getting into some games and whatnot. And this year was our first kind of taste in that, which, we would have practice and then he would have a game and I'd have to try to sprint over there to get to the game right after. And that was just with one kid. So I'm sure it's
Oh
going to
yeah.
get more difficult when they're all involved, in different things. So, but as far as, I guess from a development standpoint too, is continue to read. I think that, I've learned a lot through reading various books, but, I think I've only just scratched the surface of what I want to do and what I want to read and how that's going to kind of transform my thinking and thoughts going forward.
No, yeah, I love that because I wasn't a big reader in high school or college, but I have definitely become one as I've developed as a coach, as I've wanted to know and help people more. That wanting to learn has enhanced my development for sure. Um, and if you figure out how to balance that family with the coaching stuff, you make sure you let me know because
That's why I need to go talk to Coach Alexander. He seems to have it down pretty well.
yeah, no kidding. I see him going off and doing all kinds of crazy stuff and still doing the baseball stuff on the side and having it all done. So,
Absolutely.
um, last thing I want to get into with you is when you look at that family balance and coaching, obviously coaching takes a lot of time and a lot of focus and a lot of energy. What do you do for yourself to reset, to recharge, to regroup with the family? Are there things that you do on a regular basis? Are there things that you try to implement throughout the year? How does that work for you?
Well, I think especially during COVID, it was kind of always, you can kind of work out except like the year that you're not the part of the year that you're not in season, you can kind of get some workouts in kind of regularly. And then the season comes and then you stop and then it takes you a while to get back going. So I've really tried to keep that up. And then I just try to finish, some of those workouts with just 15 to 20 minutes where just peaceful, just kind of looking outside, kind of, just kind of be within your thoughts, almost a little meditation period. And I think that's really helped kind of reset and recharge. Uh, I love kind of we have like a little woods where we live, so it's kind of nice to be able to kind of just walk through there, just kind of just experience the outdoor, kind of experience nature a little bit, and kind of get away from everything. That definitely helps. And again, with my wife, she is a rock star. She kind of helps keep it all together. She's always there to kind of again give me the push or say, hey, you're doing too much, you're not doing enough, or whatever the case may be. So she's kind of always been that rock in our corner. But I would say definitely some of the meditation pieces and just trying to find some quiet time every now and then. That definitely kind of helps reset and recharge.
Yeah, no, I think there's some value in pacing in a sport in a coaching profession because it's so easy to get ultra competitive and dive in so deep that you burn yourself out and you lose yourself in the coaching and then you actually don't have as successful of a position because you're not all there. And so
Yeah, no,
that's
absolutely. Yeah. And I think too, it goes back to try not to focus too much on wins and losses and just really try to focus on, and we tell our players this all the time, and it's really easy to say, but it's harder to do, is just focus on one day at a time. And I think that that's something that I've gotten, I won't say I've gotten good at, because there's still days where I need to, hey, let's take a step back. Let's not worry about what's going to happen 2 weeks from now. Let's just live in the moment, live for today. So I think that if you can try to do that, and we tell our players to be where your feet are. And we always talk about win as WIN, what's important now. I think those both came from Brian Kane.
yeah.
But if you can kind of focus on that, hey, what's important now? I think that really helps shift your mindset. And especially when, when you do go home and it's after practice, but both boys want to fight with you or throw a ball or whatever the case may be, and you're tired and you're like, like maybe a little, but then hey, win. What's important now? Hey, let's throw the ball. Let's hit around a little bit. And I think those can kind of help keep you reset, focusing on that day to day at a time.
Yeah, no, and I think that's something that definitely helps if you consistently pay attention to it, because I know I wasn't as good at it when I was a player and early on after being done with my college career. I wasn't good at what was important now, what was the moment, being where my feet were. But it's something you can develop. It's something you can get better at.
Absolutely. And it kind of goes back to, you kind of mentioned it, is like some of the things that we do now, like I wish I had those as a player, or at least had more of an emphasis on those as a player, because I think I would have been so much better, and I think that, again, coaching is just trying to, hey, these are some lessons that I wish I would have had. These are some lessons that I did have that are beneficial. So let's try to, get these into you guys at a younger age, so you have more kind of time to experience, the benefits from it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's the key, is can you help people achieve greater success than you had because of the information you gave them? And I think you're doing a fantastic job of that. So, for any of my listeners, if they're looking to maybe connect with you, ask you some questions, get in touch with you, if they maybe want to go over some of the culture things that you're doing, is there a place that you want to direct them to find you?
Yeah, I mean, you can email me, C_Conn, CONN. That's at lcsschools.net. You can, my cell phone, if you want to have my cell phone, 740-506-1336. Let me know. I'd be more than willing to help out, because obviously definitely people help me out along the way, so I'd be more than happy to help anybody out.
Yeah, I'll make sure I put that in the show notes for everyone. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. It's been a fantastic conversation. I feel like I got a little bit more insight into what you're doing over there, and I'm excited to try to implement a few of those things for myself. So,
well, hey, I really appreciate you having me. It's been pretty fun. So thank you. I appreciate it.
No, absolutely. As always, guys, keep reaching for the stars, fall flat on your face. But remember, whenever we fall, always get up. Thank you for joining us today on the Edge of Greatness podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode, and join us again next time as we continue to dig deeper into the key components of greatness. The path to greatness is never linear, so remember to keep pursuing greatness no matter what. Keep stretching your abilities, reach for the stars, and fall flat on your face. But no matter what happens, remember, whenever we fall, always get up. Until next time, I'm Charles Schultz, and this was the Edge of Greatness podcast. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Please take a moment now to subscribe, rate, and review our show. We are all on the edge of greatness.